Hi, I'm Alan, and I'm going to teach you about an old scheme.
Hi, I'm Melissa, and I have a story about a circus strongman turned pyramid seeker.
Hi, I'm Darren, and I have a tale as old as time.
What does all this have to do with the word pyramid? Find out in this episode of History Bluffs. Hello and welcome to History Bluffs. It's where truth is stranger than fiction. And now I want to welcome your host. It's your host, Chris.
Hello.
There's the man.
Hello. How are you, Adam?
I'm doing good. I'm Adam, the announcer, the tech. I'm here to make you look good, my friend.
I'm right back at you. Even though you're not on screen, we know you look good because we know
yeah.
you.
Yeah, you don't have to try to make... I already look good. I'm here to help you.
Indeed. Well, welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of History Bluffs. My name is Chris. I will be your host for this evening. And we have, as always, three fantastic historians to join us on our journey today. As Adam mentioned at the top, inspired by pyramids. So let us meet each of our historians. I'm going to ask Adam, there we are, put us all in a quad look here. And so we have Alan. Welcome, Alan, back to the show.
Thank you very much.
There you go. All right. Next, we have Melissa. Hello, Melissa. Once again, to see you. It's good to see you. All right. And then we have Darren. Hello, Darren. Welcome back.
Hello.
And welcome back to the show, and welcome back to the country. Darren just got back from a nice trip overseas. I just had lunch this week with a friend, and we actually were unrelated to the show. The food pyramid came up in our conversation, and it's and the food pyramid that we knew when we were kids is different than it is today.
It's a rhombus now,
Yeah. They have different elements in the food pyramid than what we had when we were all young. So my question to the three historians, just to get your juices flowing here, what is something else that we kind of had that when you were young that was kind of a staple, something that you learned real young that's kind of changed or evolved as we've gone, like the food pyramid for me. Alan, I'll start with you.
What's changed?
Something when you were a kid. Something when you were a kid that either was talked about a lot or taught that's kind of different now.
I don't know if anything's changed, but I remember the don't talk to strangers thing, and I've realized that I should be a lot more sociable than I am. So I do have to talk to strangers quite a bit as an adult.
Okay. All right. That's a good one. Melissa, what about you? What's something that's changed since you learned it as a kid or that you were taught as a kid?
Yeah, I thought I would be using cursive handwriting a lot more than I currently do.
Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah, that's
Checks
a good one.
only. That's it.
Right. And Darren, what about you, my friend?
Well, when I was really young, men had yet to walk on the moon.
What?
And that has changed.
What?
Okay. Wow. You were very young.
Granted, I was like 2 months old, but still.
Still counts.
That still counts and technically qualifies and answers the question. So thank you all for doing that. Ladies and gentlemen, these three very well booked people, they are highly educated, all three of them, and we are going to see the depth of their knowledge, the breadth of their knowledge today on History Bluffs. The way the show works, Adam, would you mind popping up the rules of the show?
Oh, let's do it. Let's see. We've got some rules here somewhere. It's a game show. Historian rules. And for those of you listening on audio only, Chris is going to read them to you.
Here we are. So the historians are inspired by the topic. Tonight's topic, as Adam mentioned at the top of the show, is pyramid. And two of our historians are going to be telling true stories, and one will be bluffing. The true stories will be factual stories. The bluffs story will be fictional. Now, it might have some accurate and true premise to it. It might have accurate and real locations, and it might involve true people from history. but the premise of the story will be false, and it'll be a fictional story. And the other thing that we ask is we ask the audience to not debunk any of the stories until the end. Yes, I know. Debunking is one of America's favorite pastimes nowadays.
We're so bunked already. We are
bunked already. And there's still going to be an opportunity to debunk these stories, but we're going to save that for the end of the show, because the way the show works is each of them will tell us their story in 3 different parts. And we're going to go round by round, and each successive round will get smaller and shorter in duration. So the first round will be 75 seconds. The second round will be 60 seconds. And the third round will be 45 seconds. Each historian will tell us their story in 3 different pieces based on those time frames for the 3 rounds.
That sounds like a segue to me.
It really is. With that being said, Adam, let's start. Let's go to round number 1.
Let's do it.
All right. Welcome back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to start with Alan. Alan, you're going to come on screen and the center box. And when you hear the bong and you see the sundial, you're going to have the floor, and you'll have 75 seconds to start your story.
But Chris, how will we know where we are in the game?
Oh, you know how we will know? Great question, Adam. Above my head is about to appear the round tracker 10,962. And that tracker will tell us there's 3 dots for each of the historians represented in each round. And as each historian tells their story for each round, those dots will fill in. And by the time the show is over, all 9 of those dots will be completely full.
Now we're talking.
Now, Alan, I will switch places with you. You come over here, and you have the floor, my friend.
Well, Charles Ponzi invented the Ponzi scheme, so who invented the pyramid scheme? Was it Charles Pyramid? No. Francis Barbier is credited for creating the pyramid scheme, and he was in fact the main inspiration for Charles Ponzi, in which the scam is fueled by more and more new money entering the system. If I've already lost you, let me explain how a Ponzi scheme works. A Ponzi is a form of fraud that lures investors and pays profits to earlier investors with funds from more recent investors. This type of scheme misleads investors by either falsely suggesting that profits are derived from legitimate business activities, or by exaggerating the extent and profitability of the legitimate business activities, leveraging new investments to fabricate or supplement these profits. A Ponzi scheme can maintain the illusion of a sustainable business as long as investors continue to contribute new funds, and as long as most of the investors do not demand full repayment or lose faith in the non-existent assets they are purported to own. And I will tell you about the pyramid scheme in the next 2 rounds.
All right. Good opening, good segue there. Melissa, what did you think of Alan's opening round, the pyramid scheme?
You know, I was a 90s kid. I had Beanie Babies, so I'm no stranger to exaggerated claims of wealth and value. So I'm interested to see where this goes, I guess is where I'll say.
Okay, all right. Darren, what about you? What do you think of Alan's story?
I was not a kid in the 90s like Melissa, but I was just in a place where in the, I think, 1790s in Holland, there was this thing called tulip mania, where the price of a tulip bulb got as expensive as a nice house in Amsterdam. So far, everything Alan has been saying, I have heard about.
Okay, yeah. At the top of the show, I asked a question about something that we remember from being kids. And there was a commercial that sounded like it could be part of a Ponzi scheme. And I think it was, I forget what it was, for a shampoo or some hair treatment. And she told 2 friends, and she told 2 friends, and that's the way they work. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's one, our first historian for the first round. We are going to bring Melissa out. Melissa, you're going to come and switch places with me. And now we have you on the main screen. You're going to hear the bong and get the sundial, and you have 75 seconds for your first round.
Gandhi once said that strength comes not from physical capacity, but from an indomitable will. And by all accounts, a man named Giovanni Belzoni had both. So he was born in northern Italy in 1778 to a barber. He was one of 14 siblings, and he spent his early life wanting to be a monk. But before he was able to take his vows, northern Italy got invaded by France. And so he fled to the Netherlands, which at that time was the Bavarian Republic, and he worked as a barber like his father. However, by 1803, he had made his way to England, where he met his wife and joined the circus as a strongman. So he would do these kind of like Herculean feats of strength to entertain people. By all records, he was about 6'7", most records show. But eventually, he found a new occupation that better fit his strengths. He befriended important people enough to the point where he had these connections to Egypt. And the ruler of Egypt at the time was Muhammad Ali, who has no relation to the boxer. And to hear what happens next, you'll have to wait for part 2.
All right. So, Alan and Darren, we're going to hear your thoughts on Melissa's story where there was no connection between Muhammad Ali, the boxer, or the head of England, and apparently no connection between feats of strength of Kramer and Giovanni. So, Darren, what did you think of Melissa's opening story there?
At the beginning, when she was talking about someone who was training to be a monk and did all these incredible things, I thought it was some sort of weird version of the TV show Kung Fu. Then I realized that Melissa's a child of the 90s and hasn't seen that TV show. And then I remembered I've been to Egypt, I've been to Cairo, and I've been to the Muhammad Ali Mosque. And so there was an actual Muhammad Ali who ruled Egypt.
Okay. Interesting. Alan, what did you think of Melissa's story?
I just had that great image for just half a second of the boxer being in charge of all of Egypt. That'd be awesome. But I think that's interesting because, like Darren, in talking about my story, he mentioned the Netherlands, and now Melissa's story has a monk going to the Netherlands. So either a remarkable coincidence or she's just making it up on the fly.
Ooh, all right. We'll see. We'll find out. That brings us to our third unfulfilled spot in the round tracker, 10,946. That means we have to bring Darren and have Darren switch spots with me. Okay. Darren, you get the sundial, you hear the gong, and you have 75 seconds.
Okay. Of the 7 ancient wonders of the world that Herodotus wrote about, only one is still standing, the Great Pyramid at Giza. Built around 2600 BC, the pyramid at Giza is over 4,600 years old, which is staggering. Julius Caesar actually lived closer in time to the moon landings than to the pyramid at Giza by 600 years, or roughly the amount of time it took Chris to get home tonight from downtown Orlando. The reason the pyramid at Giza made Herodotus' list is because how big it is. With a height of over 480 feet, it held the record as the tallest man-made structure for almost 4,000 years. It was only with the construction of the great cathedrals of the Middle Ages that the record was finally beaten. But then again, if we talk about things that are only made of stone, it actually held the record until 1884, when the Washington Monument was finally finished, which, by the way, also has a tiny pyramid at the top. But with all of the magnificence of the pyramid at Giza, it is not the oldest stone structure ever built. In fact, that honor belongs to another structure just 10 miles away from Giza.
All right. Melissa, let's start with you. What did you think of Darren's opening round story?
Yeah, a lot of facts about the pyramids, or this specific pyramid of Giza, and I feel like it has a strong foundation, so makes sense.
Yeah,
I get the trombone. Nope.
Okay, all right, well done. Alan, what about you?
I like the chutzpah of the early Americans when they're like, hey, we can't let those Egyptians beat us. We gotta make our pyramid taller.
That's right.
And then just to slight them, they put a pyramid on the dollar.
Yeah, exactly.
Figure that out.
Yes, and interestingly, it's there's several pyramids right around the Pyramid of Giza, and because it's the oldest, they refer to it as Old Giza.
Old
yeah,
Giza.
okay, man. I can't do two trombones that close together.
No. All right. Well,
Not
if you
happening.
look above my head, for those of you watching on screen, you can see all three of the dots for the first round are filled in. So that means that, Adam, we have to go to round number 2.
Let's go at round number 2.
All right.
It's good to be back after that long break.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are for round number 2 of the show. And we are, once again, just a reminder, the second round stories for each of our 3 historians have been reduced by 15 seconds. So this round, they all have 60 seconds to tell us the middle portion of their story. Once again, we will go to Alan first. Alan, you and I will switch spots. When you hear the gong and you see the sundial, you have 60 seconds for your round 2. Begin now.
A pyramid scheme is a business model which earns primarily by enrolling others into the scheme. However, rather than earning income by sale of legitimate products to an end customer, it mainly earns by recruiting new members with the promise of payments. As recruiting multiplies, the process quickly becomes increasingly difficult until it is impossible, and most members are unable to profit. As such, pyramid schemes are unsustainable and often illegal. Pyramid schemes have existed since Francis Barbier invented the first in the mid-19th century. Now, some multi-level marketing plans have been classified as pyramid schemes. Now, Francis Barbier created his initial pyramid scheme before the American Civil War by convincing people to recruit others to sell tobacco products. The scheme promised great wealth to people who could recruit their own armies of people to sell tobacco products, and I'll get more into it in the final round.
Okay. All right, Melissa, what did you think of the second portion of Alan's story?
Yeah, so it seems believable up until you brought in tobacco products, and now I'm wondering if you're blowing smoke a little bit.
There it is. Hey, she's back.
A legitimate question. Darren, what do you think?
Well, he didn't say they were smoking tobacco products. I'm just picturing now spittoon mania sweeping the American West.
Ew. That's what. No, it makes sense.
Okay.
According to Bugs Bunny, that was prolific. So
yes,
you know.
Yes, indeed. So you can see above my head, the round tracker has one of the spots for round 2 filled in, meaning that we have to go to historian number 2. So Melissa and I will switch locations. Melissa, you're going to see the sundial and hear the dong, and you have 60 seconds for your round 2.
All right, so Muhammad Ali was the ruler of Egypt at this time from the Ottoman Empire, and basically his chief goal was to restore Egypt, specifically agriculturally. So he wanted irrigation to be better. And that's where Belzoni comes into play. He said that he invented this machine that would actually help the waters of the Nile rise to help irrigate the land around it. And funny enough, even without any engineering background, it proved to be successful when he showed it to Ali. And despite this, the Muhammad Ali wanted nothing to do with his machine, and Belzoni was again left jobless. So now he's in Egypt, but at the time he had befriended somebody from the British Empire that said, hey, we got a job for you. We want this big colossal bust of Ramses II removed, also known as the Younger Memnon. So you'll have to hear part 3 for how he was able to do that.
Okay. Well done, Melissa. So Darren, Melissa is telling us that Muhammad Ali said to Belzoni, if you don't fix our drought, I will knock you out. What did you think of what did you think of her second round story there?
I mean, she's talking about this guy who's making labor-saving devices, and that tracks with me for the ruler of the Ottoman Empire, who probably wants to have his feet up all the time.
Oh,
okay. Alan, how about you? What do you think?
So I don't understand what Muhammad Ali is thinking, turning away someone who could raise waters and in the deserts of Egypt. Like, what? Why would he turn him away? Unless Melissa made up this guy Belstoni, an Italian immigrant who's scheming people. He might be the first Italian immigrant before Charles Ponzi.
Oh wow. Could be.
Be.
We have a comment from our internet audience. I don't think it's just not keeping a solid narrative there for Mr. Robert Ross. So
Totally makes no sense, apparently.
No, it totally makes no sense. You have to sharpen up that narrative.
To be fair, he could also be talking about me and my comments. That makes sense.
That's true. You seldom making sense there.
That's right. That's right. So we now have 2 of the 3 dots filled in for round number 2. That means that I'm going to switch spots with Darren. Darren's going to come out. And Darren, you'll have 60 seconds for your round 2 of your story. Begin now.
About 60 years before the Giza pyramid was built to be the tomb for Pharaoh Khufu, Dozier, the first pharaoh of the 3rd dynasty, actually started the whole pyramid craze when he commanded the construction of a 200-foot tall stepped pyramid at a place called Saqqara, which I've been to, and it's just a short camel ride away from Giza. So our archaeologists now believe that the Pyramid of Dozier is not only the first pyramid ever built, but the first stone monument ever built, even older than Stonehenge. And so what I want to know is, why is there no love for Dozier from Herodotus or from the Norwegian songwriting duo Ylvis? I mean, I'd listen to a song called What's the Meaning of Dozier? Wouldn't you?
I would.
Who wouldn't?
But the fact is, the Dozier Pyramid at Saqqara set the stage for the building of all the great Egyptian monuments that followed. And I don't mean just architecturally, though there's obvious similarities. I'm talking about some entirely different and things like the level of infrastructure that was required that was not there before Dozier was built.
Okay. Well, let's go to our other historians and hear their comments on Darren's 2nd round. So, Alan, what do you think?
I don't know. Could Darren just have been inspired by Ghostbusters Gozier?
Yeah.
And that's where he came up with the name? I don't know. They talked about ancient civilizations in that movie, too.
Yes, they did.
Indeed. Melissa, what do you think? Is he the key master or the gatekeeper?
Well, I don't know, but I'm worried about the walls of this story kind of crumbling in just a little bit. And he's starting to cover it by this emotional, admiration of Dozier. That's what I'm wondering.
Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen.
I am going to give Darren a couple extra points for mentioning one of my favorite groups, the Norwegian band Ylvis. Thank you very much. Moving on.
Okay. Extra points for Darren. All right. You will use those wisely, I'm sure, in the portion of the show that does not exist that includes points. So,
favorite.
All right. Adam, if you look above my head, you can see that all 3 dots in round number 2 on the round tracker, 10,946, are filled in.
And so they are.
That means we have to go to our final round, round number 3.
Let's do it.
Welcome.
Round 3. Chris, it's
round
the end
3.
of the game.
It's towards the end of the game. We're rapidly approaching the end of the game, as if we are sliding down a pyramid. To the ground. Ladies and gentlemen, so this is the part now where, if you have some thoughts on who of our 3 historians might be tonight's bluff, you can start ruminating those in your head, because we're going to hear 3 rounds of stories. Once again, they've been condensed by 15 seconds. So in this round, each historian will get only 45 seconds to conclude their stories. And at the end of the conclusion of each of the 3 stories, we will then have some more comments from our historians, and then we'll get to the accusatory round, where we will determine the big reveal. We'll try to figure out anyway, who is tonight's bluff. So with that being said, let's get this party started for round number 3. Alan and I are going to switch spots, and Alan, you have 45 seconds to conclude your story. The floor is yours.
Barbier, his company claimed to sell tobacco products, including chewing tobacco as well as spittoons and other paraphernalia for tobacco. Barbier was never arrested for his initial scheme, as he fled the U.S. shortly after the South seceded from the United States. He was believed to have profited over $800,000. And now, to distinguish, a multi-level marketing scheme is not a scheme; it's actually legal. But it's controversial, and it also has a multi-tiered marketing that is similar to a pyramid scheme. And I don't even have time to explain why it is legal and pyramid schemes aren't.
Okay, save that for another show.
Yeah, I guess.
Give me Melissa, what did you think of Alan's conclusion there?
So it just occurred to me that when you say Barbier, it sounds like a fancy way to say Barbie. It's Barbier. So for that reason, I'm a little bit suspicious.
Okay. What about you, Darren? Are you seeing a doll with a French cap?
I'm starting to see why cigarettes traditionally have been the sponsors of racing, like Winston Cup Racing. They're inspired by the speed at which Barbier fled his attackers.
He fled on a cigarette boat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much $800,000 back then is worth. What's the value? Today's value for that amount of money? Interesting. All right, Melissa. He did it to a lot of people. Melissa, we're going to bring you into the main spot. And once again, for the third round, the time has been condensed down to 45 seconds, and the floor is yours.
All right. So the British Empire wants this colossal bust, and it is 7 tons. That's how much this thing weighs. And they got to drag it to the closest area so they can get it on a ship and overseas. It takes them, some estimates say, anywhere between 100 to 130 men to move this bust. And it takes 17 days to get it to the river, dragging this thing. But ultimately, they were successful. And this colossal bust of Ramses II is on display at the British Museum to this day. So other things, though, that Giovanni Belzoni did is he cleared the temple of Abu Simbel of sand. He opened a tomb of Seti I in the Valley of the Kings, and he's also the first to enter the Pyramid of Khafre. And that's
okay. Darren, what did you think of Melissa's conclusion of the Belzoni adventures?
I don't know about the crux of the story, but I've been to Abu Simbel as well, and saying that it's been cleared of sand is an exaggeration. A lot of sand.
Okay. All right. Alan, what about you?
So Giovanni Belzoni, the former strongman, turned out to be the first person to enter the Pyramid of Khafre. It's a lot of facts in there, but I'm not sure if they're valid.
Okay. Okay. Something to ponder. Something to ponder.
Something indeed. And Chris, before we get too far away, we did have another comment from Robert Ross. This is back when we were talking about the spittoons and the tobacco from Alan's story.
Okay.
I think you just wanted to acknowledge probably gummies too. Yes. We don't know.
Now I'm picturing a 19th century vape, and it's like this huge, elaborate brass thing.
It's steam powered.
Yeah,
that's right.
Literal steam.
If they weren't actual gummies, it was that century's equivalent of gummies, I'm sure, today. So that means if you look above my head, you can see 2 of the 3 dots filled in for round number 3. That means that Darren and I are going to switch spots, and Darren's going to come out for the conclusion of his story in 45 seconds, and the floor is yours.
Before Dozier was built, monuments were built of mud brick, which is hard work to be sure, but nothing like cutting stone and by hand. This is 4,000 years ago. So to build something this big and out of stone required a massive workforce, and that workforce had to be fed and housed and for years. And so that required regular tax revenue, which required keeping track of it all, which required papyrus, and it required storing grain in clay jars for the next year. So there would be food next year and taxes and laborers next year to keep building the pyramid. And so maybe more impressive than the pyramid itself was the government that Dozier built that was able to create a workforce that could create a pyramid not only for him, but for generations of pharaohs to come.
So the perpetuality of the pyramid is what he's telling us here. So, all right, Darren, what'd you think of? I'm sorry, Alan. What did you think of Darren's story? Darren, did you believe yourself? Alan, what did you?
Alan, what did himself?
Alan, what did you think?
Yeah, it's a great, bit of something to ponder there. Like Darren says, he's very much in awe of this government system that was able to create this pyramid. From what I understand, the building of the pyramids are largely a mystery. So we don't even know how much the government was responsible necessarily. So I don't know. Oh, look, Robert Ross knows
we
the
do
truth.
have an answer. Yeah. Robert Ross knows that they were built by aliens.
They were built by aliens, according to Robert Ross. So I don't know who to believe now.
All right, Melissa, what did you think of Darren's conclusion?
It sounds more like the pre-pyramids are what the story was about, the preparations of all of this and kind of like getting behind it. So that's what the end was, at least. I don't know. I think that there's a lot of things that I believe about. The mud brick seems believable. I feel like I've heard that. But I don't know. It depends on if he's going to choose to sling mud at me in my story at the end.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll find out about that because all three historians have now told us all three segments of their stories. So it is that time of the show where we're trying to figure out who is tonight's bluff. So we're going to go around the horn here and ask each historian to give us their hypothesis on who they think might be bluffing. So I'm going to start with Alan. Alan, let's hear your take on the other two, and then what do you think's going on?
Well, so I don't know enough about these topics to say whether or not anyone is specifically giving a falsehood. Melissa could have completely made up this guy who was a former strongman that was the first to enter a pyramid. But then also, I know that there's so many things about the origin of the pyramids that are completely theoretical, but Darren said them as fact. So I'm wondering if Darren, who knew that there are so many holes in the original origin of the pyramids, that he just inserted his own facts. So I'm going to accuse Darren of bluffing.
Okay, we have an accusation for Darren. All right, Melissa, let's hear your take.
Yeah, so both Alan and Darren had a similar tactic here in that they had a lot of details that kind of were facts, and I believed a lot of those facts. So I'm going to have to look beyond the foundation to the points and the details of each of these stories. And for that reason, I believe that Alan is the bluff because I just think the name Barbier is a little far-fetched.
Far-fetched Barbier. Okay.
That's what they call
we have one. Yes, we have one accusation for Darren, one accusation at Alan. Darren, let's hear your take on what's happening tonight.
Well, I actually do know a bit about both of the things they were talking about, and I know for sure that all of Alan's technical definitions of Ponzi schemes and the like are accurate. I don't know if Barbier was the one to invent it or whether or not he would use tobacco products. But I also know that the Egyptians didn't need some strongman from the 1800s to show them how to lift water because Archimedes figured it out 2,000 years earlier with the Archimedes screw that the Egyptians used for irrigation. And so I'm going to accuse Melissa.
All right. Well, look at this. We have accusations all over the field here tonight. We have one for Alan, one for Darren, and one for Melissa. So as we look back at these stories, we had Darren just concluded the last of his, and he was talking about all the things that perpetuated out of the continuous building of the pyramids. When they had this tax system and all these employees and people building these cities, they must have created a bar, right, to serve alcohol to these people. And then we had Melissa. They had nuts and beer. And then Melissa was telling us the story of the Italian Belzoni, who at one point was a barber. And Alan, of course, who started his story with Francis Barbier. So we have a bar, a barber, and Barbier. Question is, who do we think is the bluff tonight? So I'm going to leave it to Adam to let us know. Do we have any
No
audience?
No guesses from the audience,
No
but it's
guesses
not
from the
too
audience.
late to chime in before the
right.
big reveal, which is about to happen.
Big reveal is about to happen. So yes, if you think if you're in the audience and you think you have an idea of who's bluffing, please let us know. But with that being said, Adam, I'm going to come off the screen and hand things over to you to find out who is tonight's History Bluff.
All right. I have the control and the secret knowledge of who the bluff is. Was your bluff for this show, was it Alan? Was your bluff Melissa? Or was your bluff Darren? The reveal, the bluff for this whole show. It was Alan.
Ooh, what? Me?
It was you. You almost got away with it too, except for that one vote.
That's right. What do you mean I made up a name like Barbier? It's an actual French last name. I just pulled it from the internet.
From the French internet, so I don't know.
I Googled French last names and Barbier came up first.
All right. Well, congrats, Melissa, on siphoning through all of the details of all the stories and making the accusation that the accurate accusation that Alan was tonight's bluff. Well, great job, all three of you. Thank you again to Adam, our tech extraordinaire who makes all this run. And we thank you all for joining us and listening in, if those of you listening on the podcast. With that being said, we will return next week for another episode of History Bluffs. Adam, I'm going to hand it off to you.
All right. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, historians, for bringing us your knowledge, of course. And like Chris said, we're here every week. Tune in where you get your podcasts. We'll see you next week for another lesson.